Well, welcome back. It's episode 4 of The Reign of Terror, which from where we're sitting this afternoon doesn't actually exist. You're hopefully watching an animation of it. It's Toby Hadoke back again, and I've been joined by one guest star who I'm going to ask to introduce himself now.
Hello, I'm Ronald Pickup, and I was in episode, which is it?
This is episode 4
of The Reign of Terror back in 1964.
And it's are you, of all the things you've done in your career, Ronald, you're one of the most illustrious actors to have appeared in Doctor Who, and here you are nestling at the bottom of the credits of an episode that doesn't exist anymore, and you've still kindly come in to talk to us.
Well, to be part of the Doctor Who culture in any form, however small, is very important, and that's why I'm proud to be here. But also, I have to say, which may not be known, and it's of interest to me if nobody else, it was actually my very first job, literally my first job. Before I did any theatre, I was at RADA, end of July in 1964, and a friend of mine from university days, Frank Cox, who eventually became a producer at the BBC, but was then just a tea boy, he was running errands on the floor. He gave me a ring and he said, listen, you're leaving RADA, aren't you? He said, do you want a job next week? I said, well, yes. I mean, of course I do, anything. I'm going to Leicester Rep in a couple of weeks' time, but yes, next week would be terrific. Well, there's a small part in Doctor Who. He's got 3 scenes and about 3 lines. Would you like to do it? I said, yes, of course I would love to do it. So out of the blue, I was suddenly employed literally the week after I left.
Well, that's not bad, because it's the 24th of July, 64, the studio. So, yeah, you would...
There
so
we are.
Straight out of RADA and straight
out
into
of RADA into Doctor Who for a week. And I sat there like I'd, died and gone to heaven, sitting and seeing all these famous faces, particularly William Hartnell, whom I'd, as a kid, grown up with, going to movies, seeing him playing sergeant majors and cantankerous folk of different kinds. And I sat there just starstruck with my jaw dropping open, as I am now, looking at these pictures of people from the past.
Yeah, so how had you got to that point? Because so you'd left RADA around about, 20? You were 24.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
How long had it taken you to decide that acting was going to be it? Because you're not from a theatrical background.
No, I'm not. But I knew I wanted to be an actor from about the age of 11. It became sort of fairly clear to me that I did. I sort of... I was one of those kids, I was very bad at sport, and I wasn't particularly good academically, but when I was about 8, 9, 10, I used to enjoy imitating masters, school teachers, and getting a few laughs from my friends. And I also used to enjoy it when the teacher would say, I want some of you to get up and read a poem or read a speech from whatever book we might have been studying at the time. And I used to find I enjoyed that, sort of losing myself in something else. So a rather sort of obvious and corny way of enjoying being an actor from an early age, playtime, let's pretend and all of that. And then I started just doing lots of plays at school.
Now as then, not the most stable of professions. So were you discouraged or?
Only mildly, I have to admit. Yes, odd teachers would come up and remind me that, I don't know what it was, 80% of the acting profession was always unemployed. But my mother was, she'd grown up, she was born and brought up in a house that was next door to a little theatre in Chester. And she had very much something of a theatrical bug in her. She always said she would have hated to be an actress, but she had a kind of knack. She was a marvellous mimic. There was something very theatrical about her. So I think she was very excited at the thought. My father was much more cautious. He loved the theatre. He was a lecturer in English and French at Chester Training College. And he loved the thought of me being an actor, but he wanted me to have something, as you used to say, to fall back on. So
sure,
in those good old days of caution. Bless him. And quite right. Anyway, I went to Leeds University, where there was a terrific drama group. And we won the NUS Drama Festival once for production of Sergeant Musgrave's Dance. And so, albeit I did have a university degree to fall back on, I went to university knowing that I was going to a place where there was a terrific theatre group and I'd be able to carry on with the acting.
And in your first job, you're working with one of TV's biggest stars at the time, William Hartnell.
Absolutely.
Did you have much to do with him, or was a young actor?
Sadly, no, I didn't. We in those days, and I speak as someone as if I was a veteran of television in those days, and I'm not, because after that I didn't do any for quite a bit. But you were in the studio just for the Saturday afternoon. I think we recorded it, having rehearsed it all week. And because you'll know this probably better than I do, but I mean, they used to record it in one.
Yeah.
And then do odd pickups afterwards if there had been any really bad blunder. But essentially, it was almost live, except it wasn't live, but it was just done in one sweep. So you were tearing up and down the studio. And in fact, none of my scenes were with him. Sadly, because he was with his long white hair and charismatic quality. But no, I didn't.
And how would you rate him as an actor? I mean,
he was a wonderful actor.
Yeah.
Oh, he was terrific. Really, he was a very special actor. I mean, one of those people are labelled in our business as he would have fallen into the category of a sort of star or leading character actor. The word character would always be added to him because he always played what are called character parts. But as I said earlier, I remember, my whole youth, my growing up was seeing him in films about the army, whether they were comic or serious, particularly those sorts of parts where he was playing either a sort of fairly rabid sergeant major or some sort of curmudgeon, but brilliantly. And of course, Lindsay Anderson thought very highly of him because he was in
The Sporting Life.
The Sporting Life, yeah.
Which is yeah. Well, it's interesting to think that looking at him now, he's only in his mid-50s when he played Doctor Who.
I know, isn't it funny? I often think this now. I'm getting quite a bit older myself. How a certain age seems much more colossal when you're young than it actually is.
So William Hartnell's not the only Doctor that you've worked with.
Tom Baker.
He was a contemporary of yours at the National.
Yes.
Patrick Troughton was Disraeli and Church.
Patrick, I did Jenny. He was Disraeli. And David Tennant, no less, early in his career. Well, it still is early in his career, although you wouldn't think. We did a radio together of The Tempest. I was playing Prospero, he was playing Ferdinand in Birmingham, at Pebble Mill. And he did a very splendid Ferdinand. He was very, very thorough. Marvellous to watch him and listen to him learning the craft.
Well, and this is Doctor Who set in historical times. It's quite a BBC thing, that, isn't it? The idea of education through entertainment. Now, you've worked for the BBC a lot over the years. I guess it's a very different beast now to the BBC that you walked in through the doors of in July 1964.
Oh, gosh. Well, yes, it is. There is still, I think, that ethic there. It's just that now there isn't perhaps the speed of variation that there used to be. I mean, how does one talk about the differences? Everything, there's so much more at stake, you feel now. Not that it was not important then, obviously it was hugely important. But everything now is much more, you feel it has to be tried and tested in theory a lot before it's put in front of the cameras.
So there's less room to fail. Would you
like to put it that way? Yes, I think there is.
And one of the things we've established on the other episodes of this, it was your first television. Caroline Hunt, who was in the previous episode, it was her first television. It was a training ground in a way, the BBC, for a lot of people who...
Absolutely. Well, this friend of mine who rang me up, he was literally he was a sort of an assistant PA because we'd left university at the same time, and he'd gone straight to the BBC as literally as T-boy. You know,
Well, Frank, and his first job was directing Doctor Who.
You must know
Yeah,
Frank.
yeah, he directed, for those listening, The Sensorites and episode 2 of The Edge of Destruction. So he was around there and recommending you for the job.
Absolutely, and then of course he moved on to greater things from that job. But at that point, and you see, there was an example of something quite sort of daring in a way. You know, this assistant PA recommended a mate from university for a smashing little part, you know, tiny though it was, in Doctor Who.
But a tiny part in those days is still 2 or 3 scenes where you get character.
It certainly was, and it also paid me enough to subsidise my wife and I up in Leicester Rep, you know, which was my first sort of theatre job.
Well, you got £29, but you also got a couple of
You
extra...
know it all, don't you? I put it down as 30, actually.
Well, you got a couple of extra quid for a costume fitting, so that knocks it up to
went over
31.
30.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So put that in context of today. What would you have got in theatre at around that time then?
I got, I think it was about £4 rehearsal pay until we opened, and then it went up to, was it 8, something like that.
So television was a hefty whack up from theatre. Hartnell was on £210, so he would have been very well off by any standards then.
Isn't it funny that when you think the difference between hundreds and thousands and now, of course, millions. It's 210. 200 and what did you say?
210 for Hartnell and 31 for you.
It sounds, well, no money sounds much. No money sounds a little, but it does sound very little, doesn't it?
Yeah, for a leading man as well.
Yeah.
And so what is it? This is the last story of Doctor Who's first season. So was it a show that you were aware of? Had it hit the public consciousness?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen it much, simply because it was a time of day when I was at home before going to university, because obviously it hadn't been on that many years at that point. I just wasn't watching television then at that time of night, you know. And so really I missed out on its development, but I was aware of it, and obviously I'd seen a couple of episodes and knew what the score was, what the setup was, and obviously saw him.
And did you find, was it a welcoming show? Because it must have been very daunting. Did you find
it was very pleasant. I mean, I sat there, but you see, you sit there very uncritical and so much starry-eyed and your jaw dropping open at seeing these people. That whatever problems there may have been in it, I wouldn't know. But yes, they were very welcoming. He was charming, but you know, he had to get into his thing, and he was no longer young, and he was having to concentrate on the lines, as we all know as we start to get a bit older. But it's for a show that was, when you realise it was done every week, you know,
for 48 weeks a year.
For 48 weeks a year, the atmosphere was quite extraordinarily lovely.
And some of the other actors whose faces we're seeing popping up, James Cairncross.
Yes, who I had met since, only on and off, sadly, but he was the most lovely man. And he's a great friend of Ian McKellen's, who he'd acted with before. And Ian and I were in a play together recently, Waiting for Godot, when we were talking about Jimmy, who had not at that point died, which I only sadly recently realised he had. And Jimmy, bless him, had remembered that I had done my first job, not just my first television job, but my first job with him in The Reign of Terror. And I was very touched. He was absolutely lovely. As a sort of senior member of the profession, which by then he was, and very well known, he was asked about people being welcoming. He was lovely. And I had a little bit more with him, which is why he sort of took care of me in that way. I don't mean that William Hartnell was standoffish, not at all. It's just that his concentration was in, other parts of the show.
Sure, and It's Edward Brayshaw, Donald Morley. These are all sort of great character actors.
Absolutely, who I've not seen. I mean, I haven't seen Edward Brayshaw.
He died relatively young. He was 60.
I wonder, did he? He was Australian, wasn't he?
Kiwi, New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Beg your pardon. He was from New Zealand. And I guess he went back, didn't he? Did he go back home?
I don't know if he went home towards the end, but he was quite ill. He was quite ill for a couple of years before he died. But the big man, it's Henrik Hirsch, the director, who didn't cast you, but this is his only Doctor Who. Do you remember much about Henrik?
Do you know, I don't. I remember it just being very pleasant and very businesslike and being... But maybe that's the kind of weird and brash confidence you have in some ways, although you're sort of a bit breathless about it all. At the same time, you have a kind of wonderful, breezy, brash confidence at that age.
Is that because you don't know any better?
You don't know any better. So I wouldn't have been aware of... But I would have been aware of something, not pleasant or whatever. No, I remember it just being an extremely enjoyable week.
Of course, we're doing this bizarre thing of talking over a commentary on an episode that no longer exists.
I know, I keep seeing these extraordinary sort of pictures which are tweaking my memory.
But it's interesting to think that television in those days was very much ephemeral. And yet now you talked of the production of Waiting for Godot you did, which you can now see clips of online. So now even theatre is sort of recorded.
Yes.
But then the idea that you weren't in any way... There wouldn't have been a way that you'd expect to be watching something again.
Exactly, and that's why, as I say, I mean, particularly at that time, if a show like Doctor Who was on at a time of day when you specifically weren't that plugged in, basically you missed it because there wasn't the videotape. As you just said, there wasn't anything to recap.
And I have a theory I've used about you, I hope you don't mind, to other actors, where I say I always wonder if Ronald Pickup hates Doctor Who because he's done all of this stuff over so many years, but I bet you get people contacting you about Doctor Who in the same way that Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, who you worked with in Waiting for Godot, probably got besieged by Lord of the Rings and Star Trek.
And Star Trek and X-Men, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't hate anything that's been your first job, to be quite honest. I mean, I'm deeply grateful for it. And it has a wonderful, I don't know, sort of symmetry about it. I don't know in what way. Maybe they'll ask me to do one.
Ask you to come and do another one on the television? Well, we hope
that sounds like a crude hint. Well, I don't mind.
Well, you have, of
but
course,
no, I don't hate it. Of course I don't. It's lovely to get letters from Australia and New Zealand or wherever about that show, which they've rooted out, and people have tracked it down, and the assiduousness and the forensic care in which all of these things have been tracked down I think it's very touching.
And Doctor Who is, of course, now not the year-old show that you were in, but now it's huge.
Oh, yes. I mean, it is global. I mean, that much abused word, but it is, isn't it? I mean, it's phenomenal. I suppose the whole thing of travelling in time, basically, that's the part of the fascination. But it's not just that. It's about human beings in the end.
It's interesting that, stuff like this that doesn't exist, we're watching again. And yet something like, I remember you vividly in a play called Orwell in Jura, which is an absolutely magnificent piece and a great performance.
One of my favourite.
And yet it's never been, as far as I know, it's never been repeated. So it almost may as well not exist.
Well, thank God it's on film, so I don't think it can be wiped.
No, it's still there. Yeah.
Yes. I suppose it is because this has now become... a show like Doctor Who has become so huge and part of now global culture. Oh, my God.
There you are. We have a picture of you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I sort of dried. I didn't expect that to come up. Oh, dear. Actors hate looking at themselves. Sorry, as I was trying to say, because it is now so huge, I suppose anything that literally goes back into the early mists of British television is going to be intriguing, just as a piece of detective work.
Yeah,
You know, like archaeology.
TV archaeology, which is sort of what's
Digging it
happened
out. Yes.
with this episode. So you're in scenes with a couple of the regulars, Jacqueline Hill and Carol Ann Ford, being this villainous physician for 1 week, and then you don't do a lot of television then for the rest of the 60s because you went...
Not a lot, no, because I went to the National and then I started doing some towards the end of the 60s.
And you were...
Shakespeare and that sort of...
Yeah, and you. So, what was your big break? Because you started, you did, you played Octavius in Julius Caesar, which is a sort of it's a cameo part. And then but you're in great company. Did Juno and the Paycock, and you're being directed by people like Olivier. And I've just got a list here of your national contemporaries: Gambon, Blakely, Finlay, Hopkins, and you're playing good parts like Don John,
Jacobi,
in Much Ado.
Charlie Kay, Jeremy Brett,
McKellen again, Michael York, and then you play Rosalind in As You Like It in 1967.
That's right.
So was that the breakthrough? Was playing?
Well, it depends on what one means by breakthrough. I mean, the production as a whole was very high profile because at that time, unlike now, you know, the notion of going back to the old sort of Shakespeare, the necessity of having the boys play the girls, was something that hadn't been explored at all in a sort of major production, which obviously that was. So it had a huge amount of attention because of that, often with a lot of suspicion by critics and by a lot of actresses who were now often very, very jokey about it and sweet about it, whatever they might have said at the time. But in fact, it actually was a very successful production. It doesn't mean to say that everyone loved it, but it was very successful. It was very alive, and we had a terrific time doing it. So when you say a breakthrough, what it did was lift my profile or something. I mean, but, you know, along with the rest of us in the production.
Sure. Well, it was...
For the simple reason that it was so talked about.
And they were heady times, judging by...
Yes, and it was there's no doubt about it, it was a terrific time at the National. It was a heady period.
And throughout your career, there's a couple of actors in this who are playing historical characters. Keith Anderson's playing Robespierre and Tony Wall plays Napoleon.
Yes.
And you've done that in Lady Churchill. You played George Orwell, we've already referred to. You've played Verdi. So doing a part like that is the responsibility to do research, or does it not matter because you play the character within the drama rather than...
You mean doing a real character?
Doing a real person, yeah.
No, playing a real character, she's very exciting because you find that sometimes if you're doing a part that may be rather slightly written, you have to do something for it, invent something for yourself to give it a particular life, something specific, with a character like, for instance, the Orwell. I knew very little about him as a person. I mean, obviously, I'd read the books, particularly in obviously 1984 and Animal Farm. But I got the script from the great Alan Plato. It was an extraordinary evocation of what Orwell was like. And one day I rang up a man, a wonderful translator and adapter of Ibsen and Strindberg, Michael Mayer, who knew him. And he said to me, something that might be useful to you about him, how he used to sound, was that because he'd been shot in the neck in the Spanish Civil War and also had TB, he found it very difficult to talk, and he didn't like to talk much because it was painful. It was quite simply painful. I said, well, can you give me an idea of what it sounded like? And this was over the phone, and he said, it was very sort of scratchy kind of sound, as if it was an effort to speak all the time. And I think I did it a bit better than that, I think, in the film. But it absolutely gave me a clue as to an awful lot of aspects of Orwell that made him seem very laconic and often cruel and often cold and dismissive of people. It was quite simply, a lot of the time, he didn't want to talk a lot.
Well, we've had a great talk, and time has caught up with Ian Chesterton, William Russell's character. It's also caught up with us because the episode is ending. So can I just say thank you so much for joining us? And I didn't even get a chance to ask you about a performance I would urge everyone listening to go and see, which is Prince Yaki in Fortunes of War, which is, I think, one of the best television acting performances I've ever seen.
Thank you. That was a lovely... Again, Alan Plater.
And what a great role
and
that
Jim
was.
Catherine Jones, the director, yes.
So how has it been reviewing Doctor Who? It's
been wonderful, but also a reminder, seeing that Because
Ron-
I'm getting older.
Ronald Pickup, it's been a great pleasure, and thank you very much for giving us your time. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much. It's been a privilege for me.